Welcome to Brew Crime, the podcast where we drink brews, talk crime, conspiracies, or whatever catches our attention. This is Mike and my co-host.
I'm drinking. JT. I'm JT. That's me.
Yes.
I'm showing off. I'm showing off because we have a special guest tonight.
We do.
She is more than just a llama. She's a producer for True Crime in One Time, the YouTube channel, and also co-host on the Hey Ho Show, which is Fridays on YouTube on that channel. And it is Llama.
It's Llama. Hey, thank you guys. Thank you for having me tonight.
Welcome.
Thanks for accepting the random okay and me pushing you further into this this fun that we call
so much fun.
podcasting.
Insanity, yes.
It's a different beast when there's no audience. You can only entertain each other. But
yeah.
So it either hits or it doesn't. So, and sometimes it not hitting is much funnier.
Usually that's
True.
the case. Yes.
Oh man, we are doing the themes of sea crimes, crimes on the sea on the crime. That's not right. But in terms of beer pairings, I picked, it doesn't really happen in the tropics, but anytime I think of like sailing or stuff, I just think of like a lighter, comfy beer. And this sour ale by Aslan Beer, which is brewed and distributed from Alexandria, Virginia, close to me. It's fantastic. It's got pineapple, mango, vanilla, and milk sugar brewed in it.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
It is fan-friggin-tastic.
I don't even drink beer.
It's one of my favorites. It's one of the ones that's sour and light enough where Mrs. Brew's Crime actually enjoys drinking it too. So, and it's only 6%, so it's not heavy. But it's like a nice summer kind of a thing, which I always connect with sailing boats, which I don't do at all. So really, I don't know what I would connect with it. Usually vomiting is what I connect with sailing on boats.
Oh my God. You're one of them, huh?
Somebody better bring the ginger. That's all I'm saying. Somebody bring the ginger. And I don't mean a redhead. So sorry. So my case tonight is RV Dudley and Stephens, and that's royal. So Dudley and Stephens were crew members on a ship. Well, I'll explain that in a little bit. But the reason why it's titled with the case court name is because it was really, really influential in British law. So I want to start like I never do with a joke.
Ooh.
So listen, a Frenchman, this is going to be offensive to somebody, I don't know. A Frenchman, an Englishman, and a New Yorker are captured by cannibals. The chief cannibal comes to them and says, "The bad news is that now that we've caught you, we're going to kill you, put you in a pot, cook you, eat you, and then use your skins to build a canoe. The good news is you get to choose how to die." The Frenchman says, "I take the sword." The chief gives him the sword and he says, "Vive la France," and runs himself through. Exactly. The Englishman says, "Right, pistol for me, please." The chief gives him a pistol. He points it at himself and says, "God save the Queen," and shoots. And the New Yorker says, "Give me a fork." The chief's puzzled, but he shrugs and gives him a fork. The New Yorker takes the fork and starts jabbing himself all over the stomach, the side, the chest, everywhere. There's blood gushing out all over. It's absolutely terrible. And the chief is appalled and he asks, "What in the world are you doing?" And the New Yorker says, "So much for your stupid canoe."
Nice.
I thought maybe he was doing like that thing, like you have to do with potatoes when you're going to bake them. You have to like stab them with a fork a bunch of times.
Yeah,
honestly,
that's what he was doing.
That's what I thought. I was like, yeah, like, is it done yet?
that's mechanical tenderizing.
Right. There's nothing I love better than a self-tenderizing steak.
Right?
Where you don't got to do shit to shit. It's just a cow that did yoga.
Actually, I think that'd be pork chop, but yeah.
Fair. Very fair. I don't know. All right. So looking for crimes on the high seas results in a lot of pirate cases. I mean, it's kind of cool. I'm related to Sir Francis Drake. Who knew? Well, I did. I knew that. I wish I had the money that he plundered. Apparently, somewhere in my family is a deed to a castle, but of course I can't find it. So
Well,
it
Get on
doesn't
that, man.
exist. I should just pick one and attack it. In either case, of course, I came across a case that I was interested in. After I picked it, I realized it was a huge case. It was one that's considered one of the most significant legal cases, or one of them in British history, because, of course, it sounds like me. So let's make things as
Yes,
easy
it
as
does.
possible.
yes, it does.
I appreciate that you both are from different realms of what I do, and yet you totally agree with each other on that.
What?
Um,
JT picking something overly complicated and a lot?
If
Never.
anybody has ever said I am disingenuine, this is me.
No, just extra.
Yes, extra
Very
with
extra.
3 X's. All right. So this happened back in 1884, and the next part is what I like to call 1884, a reflection. So here are some things, just a few, that happened in 1884 to give you some context. 1, the Washington Monument was completed. 2, the Statue of Liberty is presented to the U.S. by France and Paris. The espresso machine is patented by Angelo Moriondo of Turin.
Wow.
Dr. John Harvey Kellogg patented flaked cereal.
Oh,
Which,
And then some other weird stuff too, I'm sure.
I have no doubt.
here's a
I
weird.
forget. I think he was one of the
no,
weirdos in history.
I'm sure it was sprinkled with radium or something. The 8-hour workday was first proclaimed by the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions in the U.S. Yay. The Berlin Conference occurred, which honestly, not great, seeing as though it was a meeting of European nations for the purpose of deciding how to divide the continent of Africa into colonies peacefully. So,
Yeah,
that's
just
not
a
great.
little bit of a shit sandwich, yeah.
like, really shitty for one group of people. There wasn't a war for others, but then people died anyways. So,
And we got cute
Um,
monuments. We got cute
yeah.
stuff.
yeah, so many, so many.
Got all the rubber.
They're eating the dogs and the cats and the pets
In Ohio.
in Springfield, Ohio.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, I need to talk to you about that. I need to call a lifeline, and we need to speak on that. Because we all know you're a Haitian immigrant. That's those. Okay, moving on. Anyways, oh look, it's funny because my next sentence is, anyways, I've lost the plot. The case centers around an extremely grim episode of survival at sea, where moral and legal principles collided. And as I said, it's foundational in British criminal law, particularly for its implications regarding necessity as a defense to murder. You know those leadership exercises where you have to decide what to bring or what happens on a lifeboat, depending on the people, their characteristics, failures they may have had, etc. This isn't
Yeah.
exactly like that, but it's pretty close.
They should just do the next season of Survivor on the open ocean.
Yes.
One of my favorite
Waterworld.
podcasters is going to be on Survivor. I'm so excited
Really?
to actually watch him. I've never seen a season of Survivor, but I will watch this one for John Lovett.
Yes.
Yes. So the period between the mid 19th century to the early 20th century was called the Golden Age of Sail. The 19th century in general saw a massive increase in seafaring activities due to global trade, the British Empire's expansion, and advancements in technology. But shipwrecks and maritime disasters were most certainly not uncommon, and survival at sea often led to extreme, desperate measures. If you consider just the maritime accidents, which resulted in 30 or more lives lost, you're looking at well over 125 accidents. Easy. And we're talking hundreds sometimes at a time. In 1865, 1 out of every 12 vessels reported the death of at least one member of its crew. It's crazy. But, you know, that's kind of the ego of humanity. See a big thing of water and want to cross it, float on it, conquer it. It's kind of what we do. And then kill people on the other side. It's fine.
Mhm.
It's all fine. It's fine.
It's all fine.
It's burning. It's fine.
It's part of the journey.
They said we didn't choose that option in the pick at your own adventure.
Yeah, no.
It wasn't our choice. So before the 19th century, cannibalism among stranded sailors, known as the, quote, custom of the sea, was often regarded as a tragic but necessary evil in cases of extreme hunger. There was no legal precedent that firmly criminalized such acts until the R.V. Dudley and Stephens case. Now, the Mignonette, it's what I'm assuming it is pronounced as, because Mignonette sounds silly, was a 52-foot cruiser built in 1867. It was primarily an inshore boat, and it was definitely not made for long voyages. An Australian lawyer named Jack Want, appropriate, bought it in 1883 for leisure trips because, of course, he did.
Because
Jack
he's Elon Musk.
Elon Musk of 1984 or 1894.
Yeah, right. So Jack was an Australian barrister and politician, as well as the 19th Attorney General for New South Wales.
But how many rockets did he design? Which is still 0 for Elon too.
Well, he's not a Nazi, so not many. The vessel could be the vessel was in Southampton, and it wasn't made for long trips, but they were gonna take it to Sydney. So the vessel could be transported to Australia only by sailing. The ship's size and 15,000 miles or 24,000 kilometers, we do that here, we do both, voyage daunted attempts to find a good crew. They would be sailing it from Southampton to Sydney, and it's not a trip for the faint of heart. Now, who was on board? Tom Dudley was the captain. You had Edwin Stephens, Edmund Brooks, and Richard Parker. He was the guy. Richmond Parker was the 17-year-old, was the cabin boy, was an inexperienced sailor, but was there. And I realize that when I say cabin boy, there are a billion jokes that pop into all of our heads. So I just want us, if you have one, go for it. I don't.
I mean, with all those seamen around.
Exactly.
Yes.
But
I'll say this. I wrote inexperienced, but very much so in all of my sources, it said an inexperienced seaman. And I just feel like it's not cool to call him that because, I mean, he exists. So at some point there was an experienced seaman around, you know?
You don't want to talk about the experienced seaman around the young seaman.
That's fair.
Question, where was Southampton again? I missed that part, I think.
Southampton's in Wales. So
Wales.
England.
Okay, so we're going
so
from
they're literally
England to Australia.
Yeah, so literally going down through the Atlantic around the Cape of Africa and, south of India and all that. So on the 5th of July, the yacht was running before a gale around 1,600 miles or 2,600 kilometers northwest of the Cape of Good Hope, which is located on just the tip of South Africa. It's the only time I actually mean it. The weather wasn't extreme. That was terrible. The weather wasn't extreme, and the yacht wasn't really having any difficulties. So Tom Dudley said, well, let's park it, and the crew can sleep and have a good night's sleep. The maneuver that he told them to do is called heaving, which I would be doing, as mentioned before, just not in the way he means it. In sailing, heaving to, or to heave to, or to be hove to, is a way of slowing a sailing vessel's forward progress, as well as fixing the helm and sail position so that the vessel doesn't have to be steered. It's commonly used for basically a break. And this may be sometimes used to wait for the tide before proceeding or to wait out a strong or contrary wind. The problem was that once the maneuver was completed and the cabin boy was sent to make tea, a wave struck the yacht and washed away the lee bulwarks. Now, I don't know what those are, so let me tell you.
They're brothers, the cyborgs.
Right.
They come from Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yes.
So the lee side of the ship is the one that does not have the wind blowing on it. So to those of you from the South, specifically my area, it's not the Robert E. Lee side, it's just the lee side. And it failed. So
just as racist, though.
Yeah, right. A bulwark is a nautical term for the extension of a ship's side above the level of the weather deck. Basically, it's the wall people lean on when they're on top of the ship, and it's a way to keep people from simply walking off or sliding off the ship. So it's just that wall, So it was the non-wind wall that was washed away. The captain, Tom Dudley, realized that the yacht was absolutely doomed, and he ordered a 13-foot, 4-meter lifeboat to be lowered into the water. The lifeboat was flimsy. It was the Timu of lifeboats. Terrible. According to the proceedings and the facts of the trial, the boards that made it up were only a 1/4 inch or 6 millimeters thick.
Jesus.
So when I say flimsy, you could and it's done.
I'm sure that'd be great for paddling on a lake when it's crystal clear.
Yeah, right.
Maybe.
So and it was also made in haste because they wanted to get the yacht away on the trip. So it wasn't great. The ship sank within 5 minutes of being struck by that wave. So
Shocking.
Dudley was right. Right. There is argument. There's conversation, in the historical sailing community, historical true crime law sailing. I don't know. It's very niche about like how well it could have actually been made. But I don't know. But it sank within 5 minutes. The crew abandoned the ship for the lifeboat. The only thing that they could save were navigational instruments, 2 tins of turnips, and no fresh water. Because when a ship's sinking, I want a compass.
I mean, navigation still pretty important. Know which way is which. And water then would just be barrels, so that'd be really hard to save.
All of their sailing fathers were like, back in my day, we used the stars and we liked it. We didn't need no fancy dancy compass. All right.
Hey, Grandpa Simpson.
Get out of my lawn. So dude managed to create a sea anchor to keep the lifeboat headed into the waves and maintain any semblance of stability. The very first night, the crew had to fight off a shark with their oars. And
Nice.
Where's the orcas when you need them?
right? God. So the very first night, they fought off sharks with oars. At this point, they were 700 miles or 1,100 kilometers from the nearest land. And this would have either been St. Helena, literally in the middle of nowhere to the west of Africa in the middle of the Atlantic, or Tristan da Cunha, which sounds dirty. They call it the Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. I didn't look into why. Because it's just fun to imagine, like, tropical in kilts. I suppose it's cooler with a breeze. But basically, it's also to the west of Africa in the middle of nowhere. Dudley kept the first tin of turnips alive until like 2 days later, July 7th, when its 5 measly pieces were shared among the men in order to last them 2 days. Five. I can just imagine him opening it and it's just being like a cartoon where it's just like a zoom in of just like empty,
Yeah.
just crickets. Although they probably would have preferred crickets at this point. Around July 9th, Brooks spotted a turtle. Stephens dragged it on board. The crew were avoiding drinking seawater as it was then thought to be fatal to them. And though they did eat the turtle, they decided not to drink its blood when it became contaminated with seawater. In terms of eats, the turtle gave them around 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms of meat each, and they ate everything, including the bones.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of turtle to eat.
It is a lot of turtle. Am I not turtle enough for the turtle club?
Do turtles have bones?
Yeah,
Yes, they do.
So.
The shell is like a bone itself on top, and then there are bones underneath.
Within it. Okay.
Yes.
Never thought about it before.
Considering the late 1800s and the general health of teeth, I can't imagine eating those would go very well.
Probably not.
But I'm sure they weren't worried about that at that point. In addition to the turtle, the second tin of turnips lasted until the 15th or the 17th of July. They capsized on the 5th. This is the 17th of July.
Oh, wow.
Right? Oh, there you go.
Oh, thank you, Mike. That's helpful. Showing me some turtle bones.
Look at that.
The more you
On
know.
Google.
Which actually, out of context, sounds like a really, really small subgenre of Pornhub.
Well, we all have our things.
It was really created just for RFK Jr. in mind.
I bet they party
right.
with snails.
Yeah.
In addition to the turtle, like I said, the second tin of turnips lasted until the 17th. The crew, despite having some rain, failed to catch it. And by the 13th of July, with no source of fluids, they began to drink their own urine. And if you get to that point, you're in trouble.
You're Bear Grylls.
You're also Bear Grylls. It's a choice. I mean, I guess we've got our own hose, so don't got to collect it nowhere.
I mean, it's non-toxic a couple times.
Some politicians really dig it. It was probably on July 20th that Parker became ill from drinking seawater. Parker was the 17-year-old inexperienced seaman. Stephens was also unwell. They think this was due to drinking seawater as well, or at least trying to. So they're out of food. There's no water. It's been 15 days. Folks think that the idea of drawing lots in order to nominate a sacrificial victim who would die to feed the others was probably discussed around the 16th or 17th of July. And the debate about the process escalated on the 21st, but there was no resolution at that point. Pushing on into July 23rd. Or, what?
How
Selfish?
selfish of them. I'm just kidding.
Super shellfish.
Shellfish.
So July 23rd or 24th, Parker, the 17-year-old cabin boy, was seemingly in a coma, just not really responsive.
Oh no.
Yeah, I know. Dudley told the other crew members that it was better than one of them dies, that the others survive, and that they should draw lots for it. Well, Brooks was having none of that. But Dudley was having none of Brooks. So he raised the issue with Stephens, pointing out that Parker was probably dying and that they had families. And with convincing like that, they decided to leave the matter until the morning. So the following day, as they looked around, there was no possible chance of rescue. Dudley and Stephens tossed up some gang signs, or, rather silently signaled to each other that Parker was the one to be killed. The thought was that killing Parker before his natural death would better preserve his blood to drink. I'm not sure why, but
Poor
it sounds like an
Parker.
M. Night Shyamalan film combined with True Blood
Yeah.
Oh.
with less boobs. So
This is not where I thought the story was going. This is riveting.
So Brooks, the third crew member, had no idea about the conversation prior, and you'd think he would maybe be a little disgusted. Also, you'd think he'd know if he was in a effing 4-foot lifeboat.
Right.
How do you
You'd think,
not
yeah.
know what's being said? Like, what were they just tapping out a beat, and that's how they communicate? It's just ridiculous. But he didn't show one way or another if he was disgusted. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just kind of sat there. Now, Dudley, the captain, says that Brooks said it was okay, but it's kind of a he said, she said kind of thing. So Dudley said a prayer.
Stupid.
You have no idea how long I looked at that to be like, will that read? I don't know if that'll read. Saying it out loud to myself with research assistants around, like I'm not crazy. So Dudley said a prayer. Say a little prayer for me. All right. With Stephens standing by him, basically to hold the youth's legs if he struggled. And he had a pen knife. A pen knife. And he pushed that into Parker's jugular vein, killing him. There are...
Oh.
Yeah,
I was really rooting for Parker.
Well, remind me not to take you to Vegas.
That's true.
Somebody was going to die in this. So there are some later accounts that say that Parker murmured, "What, me?" as he was killed. But in the end, the three ate Parker, with Dudley and Brooks consuming the most and Stephens very little. The crew was able to finally collect rainwater.
They had to eat it raw.
Oh, yeah.
Raw.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yep. Raw Parker.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't
That's
know.
not great.
I'm not big on sashimi anyways.
I mean, I guess he was young, so, there wasn't a lot of time for toxins and bullshit to...
It's lean
I don't know. It's the late
cuisine.
1800s. I feel okay making a joke about cannibalism at this point. I think there's no spoiler alert needed.
Yes.
So Dudley described the scene, and he said, quote, I can assure you I shall never forget the sight of my two unfortunate companions over a ghastly meal. We all was like mad wolves who should get the most. And for men, fathers, and children to commit such a deed, we could not have our right reason. So on 29th of July, just a couple days after, they saw a sail on the horizon. They were, because of course, just after, right? They were picked up by a German sailing bark, the Moctezuma, which took them home to Falmouth, Cornwall, arriving on Saturday, September 6th. Effectively, they were stranded for almost a full month.
At sea, wow.
At sea. With
Sounds horrifyingly
two
bad.
cans of turnips, a
Yeah.
turtle, and Parker.
Parker.
Or Parker.
Yeah.
So they attended, they went to the customs house, which was traditionally a building housing the offices for jurisdictional government, whose officials oversaw functions associated with goods, exporting, importing. So Dudley and Stephens entered statements because, in the event of a shipping loss, the Merchant Shipping Acts required it. All three of the crew were pretty candid about everything that happened. And the reason why is because Dudley and Stephens specifically thought that they were protected by a custom of the sea, as in, this ain't the first nor the last time it's happened, and it was pretty common, so
Yeah, exactly.
But that wasn't entirely the case. You know how there's always just like that one asshole who's uptight who asks about homework at the end of class?
Yes.
Like they weren't about to assign it, and then all of a sudden they go assign it. Like you either had those folks in your classroom, or them in adult life and you hate their guts, or if you don't, then you are that person. Just tossing it out there. The side eye I'm getting is amazing. You can't see it, everybody. Anyways, a police sergeant, Laverty, was around the area when the depositions happened, and later decided to question Captain Dudley Do-Right about, that was my Canada reference, about the means in which he killed the boy. Parker. Then the sergeant also took the penknife, and the depositions were sent to the Board of Trade via telegraph, beep, 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 and to the Registrar General of Shipping in Basinghall Street in London. So the three survivors were making arrangements to join their families again, but Basinghall said, "Nah, man, nah, you go ahead and detain them." Also, I would love to see late 1800s Englishmen going, "No, man, no." Just makes me happy. So, while they were told to be detained, there was another organization that gave conflicting advice to take no action. But so the goal was they were going to inform the Home Office, which is where the whole shipping in and out government stuff was. But the office was closed for the weekend. Government. At the same time, the sergeant was looking for warrants for the men's arrest for murder on the high seas, which he obtained later from the mayor of Falmouth, Henry Liddycote, which is the most British name I've ever heard.
Yes, he sounds like a stuffy person.
A fancy man.
Henry Liddycote from Falmouth.
Yes. Horribly annoying fancy pants.
For sure, a fancy pants. They were sent and held in a borough police station until they could appear before the magistrates on September 8th. Duds seemed to think it was a done deal and that they would dismiss the charges and that the Mayor Liddycote would visit them to apologize for the inconvenience. Instead, the magistrates were instructed to seek the advice of the Treasury solicitor in all murder cases, and the clerk most likely prompted Laverty to ask for a remand in custody and adjournment while advice was sought. Harry Tilley, which makes me laugh so hard, was a local solicitor, and he appeared for the men and requested bail, but that was rejected, and they went back to their cells until September 11th. Close to our recording date.
Mm-hmm.
The local solicitor, their lawyer, his name is Harry Tilley. If you wanted to laugh at that.
Nice.
So the Common House was back open, having relaxed during their weekend break. By Wednesday, the file was passed to the Home Secretary, Sir William Harcourt. Harcourt spoke with Attorney General Sir Henry James and Solicitor General Sir Ferrer Herschel. That is not a British name I would think of. That's the old cute man in Walking Dead, Herschel. The decision was made.
Cute.
He was. The decision was made to prosecute. The court of public opinion thought differently. However, it swung in the defense of the defendants. Parker, the cabin boy's brother, Daniel, appeared in court and shook hands with the three guys. The case was adjourned until September 18th. But the solicitor was able to obtain bail this time. So a really effective Harry Tilley. General public opinion, not just local, was with the three guys. So it wasn't just local. The story spread and more people were behind them. So a barrister named William Otto Adolf Julius Dankwerts, which, by the way,
that's a name.
That might be one of the most British German names ever. And I do want to be clear on this. He used Adolf before Adolf was ruined.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Just and also I really want to say it in a German accent. I want it to be Wilhelm Otto Adolf Julius Dankwärts. I just feel like that makes more sense.
It probably should have been that way.
He was a barrister, but he was only 6 years in. But he did happen to be a specialist in wreck inquiries, was briefed for the prosecution. Dankwärts realized that the public opinion and lack of evidence made it extremely difficult to prosecute. The only witnesses were the three defendants themselves, and their right to silence would impede any formal proceedings. A confession was only admissible against the person making it, not his co-defendants, and the contents of the depositions were most likely inadequate to convict. The case was eventually heard by magistrates in Falmouth on September 18th. Dankwärts told the court he wasn't going to offer any evidence against Brooks and requested that he be discharged so as to be called as a witness for the prosecution. So Dankwärts said Brooks didn't really have a hand in it. They said that there wasn't any evidence that Brooks had been informed the killing was going to happen. The magistrates agreed with him, so Brooks was let off the hook.
He's the one that
Also-
was all like, I didn't hear nothing, right?
It was,
Okay.
yeah, it was basically a plea deal because they let him off the hook. He can testify for them against the other two.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of found that a little dirty, which was literally all of England at that point. So Brooks was in the clear, but Dankwärts opened the case and called as witnesses those who had heard the survivor stories along with Brooks against Dudley and Stephens. And the magistrates determined Dudley and Stephens would go to trial in Exeter, but they also extended their bail. So they're still out, but they're going to trial. The trial opened November 3rd before Baron Huddleston.
Oh my.
Arthur Charles led the prosecution, and Arthur J.H. Collins led the defense. Very original. The jury, truly, these guys sound like they should be characters in a musical about this.
Was there a round table? Like all these Arthurs?
Oh my gosh. They would have to fight to find out who gets the seat.
Yes.
Oh man. So the jury was sworn in. Most of them had actually sat with a judge the previous day in a murder case that resulted in the death penalty. So they're very open to this idea. So the two crewmen pleaded not guilty. The prosecution dismissed the insanity defense because it was clear from the depositions and Dudley's prayer that they knew exactly the gravity of their choices. See, Don't pray. You're fine. The judge seemingly already had made up his mind, and he didn't seem too interested in hearing any information from the defense. Huddleston, the Baron, already determined how he was going to make sure this was a guilty verdict and settle the law on necessity once and for all. This was his chance to make his mark and put his name on a law, right?
Sink his teeth into a law.
Right. Yes. Fleshy. So this is what he was going to do. He was going to invite the jury to return a special verdict, which stated only the facts of the cases they found them, but they gave no opinion on guilt or anything else. That way, the judge could decide whether the facts amounted to guilty. So this was around 1884, and while the special verdict had been used, there hadn't been one given by a jury since 1785, 100 years earlier. Huddleston said to the jury that the legal question of the case would be settled by a reserved bench. So in the end, it was going to be a reserved bench. Basically, the judge was going to adjourn the trial after the special verdict and then reconvene with other judges to pronounce guilt and sentence. This is just kind of like I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want kind of a thing to me.
Sounds like the Supreme Court in the U.S.
No! Can't even argue that. The cases were presented in front of the jury. The judge finally gave them basically a binary decision. They said accept his direction to find the men guilty of murder or return a special verdict. So it's kind of a lose-lose. There's no winning.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I'd be like, I demand a recount. Bad timing.
Roe versus eat.
Roe versus eat. Oh, plot twist.
I'm not
It was
even
actually
sorry.
Guy Fieri from Flavortown. So everything was tasty. Okay, the judge, without waiting, had a special verdict he'd written the night before, and he invited the jury to indicate their assent to each paragraph as he read it out. So they didn't even really talk about this. The judge was
Convenience.
just like, I've written this for you. I've done your homework. Here it is. Now sign it. It basically read that the fellows would have died within 4 days. Otherwise, Parker probably would have died before the men, that at the time of the killing, there was every probability that all four would have died unless one of them was killed and eaten, blah, 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 blah. The final words of the verdict were, quote, but whether upon the whole matter the prisoners were and are guilty of murder, the jury are ignorant and refer to the court.
What?
So
What?
Wow.
Wow.
there's a good reason I put a lot of the trial stuff in here, because I knew you'd be into that, Llama.
Yes. I have so many opinions.
Oh, so did he too. Except his resulted in whatever they did. I'm not gonna
Spoilers.
ruin it. Right. So the judge renewed the defendant's bail. How nice of him. Adjourned till November 25th. Now, push come to shove, Barron did some shisty stuff, and it eventually caught up with him in one way or another. Tuesday, December 9th, the court delivered its reasons and sentence. The panel of judges found there was no defense of necessity to a charge of murder because of legal precedent, and on the basis of ethics and morality. Basically, to preserve one's life is a duty, and war is full of instances in which it's a man's duty not to live, but to die. The duty regarding the shipwreck for the crew imposed a moral necessity to sacrifice their lives for others. Further, the judges questioned who was qualified to make the decision of who should live and who should die. And they said this, quote, it must not be supposed that in refusing to, I'm not going to do that the whole time, refusing to admit temptation to be an excuse for crime, it is forgotten how terrible the temptation was, how awful the suffering, how hard in such trials to keep the judgment straight and the conduct pure. We are often compelled to set up standards we cannot reach ourselves, and to lay down rules which we could not ourselves satisfy. But a man has no right to declare temptation to be an excuse, though he might himself have yielded to it, nor allow compassion for the criminal to change or weaken in any manner the legal definition of the crime. In short, they were sentenced to statutory death penalty with a recommendation for mercy.
Okay.
Which I assume is like, it's a recommendation for life without parole.
Mhm.
That's really where they're going. So Collins, their person at the time, their lawyer at the time, was still able to move solicitor at the time, was able to move a writ of error, which is basically an appeal. But by December 11th, the fair-weather friends of the court of public opinion seemed to have swayed against them. If there was any mercy shown, it would have to be by Queen Victoria on the advice of Home Secretary William Harcourt. Harcourt was actually a proponent of ending the death penalty.
Ooh, I like him.
But he knew he had official duties that couldn't get in the way. He decided to respect the judgment and thought that anything less than life in prison, if the sentences were commuted, would mock the law. The Attorney General felt life would not be popular. The lower court had withheld a finding of manslaughter from the jury. So basically, they didn't give the jury the option to choose manslaughter instead. And if that was available to them, they had said that it would have been the jury's verdict. And the Solicitor General agreed with that. So on December 12th, 1884, Harcourt, the Home Secretary, decided on 6 months imprisonment. They were advised the next day, but were disappointed because they were held in custody for a pretty fucking long time.
Better than death, though.
It's true. Dudley, throughout, refused to accept his conviction. Ultimately, the two were released on May 20th, 1885. This all happened within a year. They were out before they ended up initially setting sail, which is amazing if you look at trials today.
Yes, 100%.
So, in terms of pop culture, the crew's ordeal inspired a key Monty Python sketch, Lifeboat Cannibalism, Still No Sign of Land, where 5 sailors are on a lifeboat after a shipwreck. The means to survive is cannibalism. Once they decide whom to eat and which body parts, a waitress is called over to take their orders, complete with vegetables. Right?
I have not seen that one.
Yeah, and in Monty Python's Flying Circus, that's followed by the controversial Undertaker sketch, which also features cannibalism. Jan Martel in Life of Pi named the shipwrecked Bengal tiger Richard Parker.
Oh, shout out to Parker. Oh,
Shout out to Parker.
Our hometown
Uh,
hero.
in 2004, American folk rock band the Avett Brothers named their album Mignonette after the involved yacht. In early 2022, the Berkeley Repertory Theater in Berkeley, California, premiered the musical Swept Away, which is based on an album and involving different fictional shipwreck, but the same concept. There was also a Canadian author in 2017, Peter Stadecker, published the 12-man Bilbo Choir, which is a novel inspired in part by the Mignonette incident.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in conclusion, don't eat your friends or crew. Probably not a good look or a good idea. But if you have to do it, head towards the deep waters. And I think that's what Jeff Goldblum meant in Jurassic Park when he said, cannibalism finds a way.
I think you bastardized that a little bit.
I sure did. I cannibalized it.
Yes.
Yeah.
True,
I
true.
did. But that's my case. And wow.
Wow,
I'm so
indeed.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad it was the late 1800s because for a little bit, I was looking for like the details of the cannibalism, and I was like, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I doing this to myself on a work computer? I'm
You just
definitely getting
wanted a
fired.
steak.
I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that they got rid of the insanity defense. Like, I don't know how much you guys know about what happens to you when you're stranded at sea, but like you're hallucinating pretty much the whole time. Like and they said they drank seawater. What do you think
Yeah.
happens? And then you have the
So-
sun on you. Like I'm obsessed with the USS Indianapolis. Like I got like 4 books on it. And their stories are crazy.
So really what this means is you and B should not go into one of those swan boats
Oh no.
and get lost out in the middle of the lake. It would not
No.
be good. B would not be back. You would make it back.
I would probably die. I don't do water.
That's right.
I just
you
feel
do
like
not.
I'm dead now.
Just take me now. You can kill me. Eat me.
Eat me, that's
Water
fine.
close to shore is wonderful.
I love how you invited me on the show. I don't know if you thought about my love for the survivor cannibalism game I enjoy playing.
Wait,
Well,
what?
Metaphorically, of course.
I'm so confused. Wait, what? You like cannibalism?
No. I'm saying survivor cannibalism.
Oh, survive. Oh, I see.
Thought exercises, sir. Thought
Yes.
exercises.
I mostly picked. I thought you'd like this because it was the open sea. That's not why I put none of these things together at all.
Because
The
we were
thought that I would
recording today.
even link two of those thoughts together would be a miracle.
That's
Um,
true. That is true.
My Vyvanse works, but in all the wrong ways. So
Well, that was fascinating. I did not see a lot of that coming. So
see,
fascinating.
it left
I'm
me a
glad they
little
weren't put to
salty.
death, though. Like, that's nice, I guess. But
Yeah.
now I
mean,
wonder how long that held up, because there's been a
That's a good
lot of
question.
instances.
Yeah, I mean, I'm imagining only but so long, because eventually that stuff got more consistent. Like you were able to rely more on like ship travel, and the early 1900s things started modernizing a little more, and so I would imagine eventually, basically, the culture of the sea shifted.
Mhm.
The tide went out. I don't know. They rode the barrel away from cannibalism.
Yeah.
They packed a few extra oranges. I don't know.
So JT, if the Vive is it Vyvanse? Is that what it's called? If it's not working or it's working in all the wrong ways, it must be JD Vyvanse.
That's funny.
Listen, sir, he is very busy grilling up a golden retriever right now.
Probably.
Well, he thinks it's a golden retriever. Somebody in the Secret Service just gave him a hamster and said it
True.
was. So, good God.
All right.
Jeffrey Dahmer Vance.
All right, better wrap this one up then. Thanks for tuning in to Brew Crime. You can find us on all social media platforms at Brew Crime. We have a Facebook group at Brew Crime the Group. If you'd like to support the show, head to patreon.com/brewcrime now. Money goes towards upgrading equipment and making the show that much better. You get one bonus episode a month as well as early ad-free access to our episodes. So shout out to our Patreon supporters, True Crime Nana, Three Beers In, and the faves of our lives. Bye. All cases in Brew Crime are written by Mike and JT or a writer we credit on the episode, and sources are put into our show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at tpublic.com/stores/brew-crime-podcast, where you can purchase gear like t-shirts, phone cases, stickers, pillows, and all kinds of other cool stuff. Brew Crime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo designed by Ben Greenberg. Thanks for listening to this episode of Brew Crime Podcast.
The truth is out there. Follow us.
We interrupt this program for a special report by WKMU.
We will return you to your scheduled programming shortly. Can't sleep? Neither can we. And who are we? Well, I'm Sky, and she's Blue. And dial in as we explore everything from the 1,200-year-old structure, Gobekli Tepe, to UFOs, conspiracy theories, and bizarre stories from around the globe. Tune in at wkmu.podbean.com. That's wkmu.podbean.com.
This concludes our broadcast day.
Let's see. Just in terms of updates, I went to go see Bowling for Soup again, Mike, on Tuesday, which was good. Yeah. They did a great show per usual, and it was nice because they were going through their entire Hangover You Don't Deserve album. And I know. Big old shrug. It's
no
good
idea.
for podcasting.
I might see them when they come here. We'll see.
You really should. You'll love this. This tour is fantastic. It was cool seeing Don't Panic and Wheatus. Wheatus is very unique. In fact, they arranged the stage, the way that they arranged the instruments and the band for Wheatus is in a U, and the drummer's on one side facing him on the other, and there's nobody in the center. It's really interesting. It's very late 90s, early thousands. He's 50 and he's still doing this. So
I can't believe Wheatus is still touring. Like,
oh man,
that's cool.
I don't think he can believe it either, but not only does he tour, but he packs up all his shit. Right behind me, as they were getting Bowling for Soup ready on the stage, he was behind taking apart microphone stands, putting his guitars away. He put on one of those headlamps in order to see what he was doing, which totally destroys the rock and roll thing, but
Right.
whatever. But he, the last song was obviously Teenage Dirtbag, and he was like, you guys really want to see a 50-year-old do the girl's voice? And everybody's like,
that
fuck
song.
yeah.
I know that song.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, I wondered how that song
It's all
goes
him
now.
Man. He sounds just like he did.
Wow.
There's no difference. I really appreciated him because he was in the middle of one of their more popular songs. I gauged that by the audience's reaction when it started, because I don't know a lot of Wheatus, but there was somebody who dropped in the middle of the audience, and he just cut the song. They stopped. He pointed. They got the people there to take care of the person, and he refused to start until he got the okay. And that's kind of the punk rock concerts, and punk rock fans are like some of my favorites.
Look at that. He isn't a teenage dirtbag.
He isn't. In fact, he ruined my life when he said last night, a lot of people ask me if Teenage Dirtbag's a true story. It's fictional. And I was like, you suck, because that was my true story.
Oh my.
Tickets for Iron Maiden, baby. All right.
Yeah, speaking of teenage dirtbags, not at all.
Yeah, not even close. I mean, there is a teenager involved in my case tonight. This would have been either okay. The thought that men jurisdictional the
Bye.
ahoy.
I don't think that means the same thing. Like,
Chips
aloha.
ahoy.